Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the Madonna channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. Merry belated Christmas, and of course, happy holidays to everyone. So, with the full list of DBT04 came in for the whole of Overdress, of course I will be going through every single one of their support and basically review on what they will be doing. Since I am a Bruce player, so naturally, I will be going through Bruce first. Let's get right into them. First up, of course, is the draw trigger with the 10k shield draw trigger that every single nation will have it. Rouse WIldmaster Riley, continuous Guardian Circle. If your opponent Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets 5k shield. Now this is basically the same as the front trigger that is basically a 20k shield if your opponent is at grade 3, but then this is a draw trigger which is going to be a 10k. It's basically more of a defense creep. More defense creep is always welcome. And of course here are all of the nations draw trigger. The draw trigger is not necessarily to be run for dark states, well, except for maybe Greedon as well as Barrow Magnus. Bruce don't really need this draw trigger because you will deck yourself out really fast. So not necessary to be run, but of course, if you do want to run it, I'm not gonna stop you entirely from running the draw trigger. It's still a really good card. When what's better than a really good card? A 10k shield. And also, this card could be discarded as a right depth discard target, but then from a 5k shield to a 10k shield does hurt a little bit. So you do need to take that into consideration because most of your normal units are going to be 5k shield. Well, this is a 10k shield already, so there's that to think about. Next up, we have DIabolos girl Stephanie. Continuous rearguard circle. If you are in final rush, all of your other units in the same column as this unit gets 5k power. The passive power to any unit in the same unit is really nice and also does helps with Unrivaled Bruce from losing the personal right. So it's still quite good in a sense, but not really. It's not going to be as good as personal riding because the personal riding, it's a constant 10k regardless. You could also put Stephanie behind the Vanguard to give Unrivaled Bruce or Violence Bruce the 5k power, which is still quite nice, but of course she is not generating enough value for you to be running her in a deck. It's okay, I guess. Not really the best, but okay. Next up, we have DIabolos Jetter Wade, active rearguard circle. If you have a Vanguard with Bruce in its card name cost, put this unit into your soul and it gets 10k power until the end of turn. So this card basically is where the speculation of restanding Bruce comes in because we do see a lot of cards that give Bruce the 10k power. So I guess I'm basically smacking myself in the face by saying Bruce are the most unlikely to restand. Yeah, you guys already know my reaction to that. Oh! This card is surprisingly a really great recycle target for Lyle, which is the new double R, because you could basically just call Wade out, put him to soul to give Bruce the 10k power, call Riley out to counterblast on Soul Charge 2 to call back Wade, and then just put Wade back to give Bruce another 10k power, which is quite nice. And not only that, you're doing it for one counterblast. You get 3 soul in that process. So it's really not bad. And also powers up Unrivaled and provide you with soul resources is always nice. If you are running the new order card, the Helheim Fervent Rage, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is this card, it does kind of compensate the power a little bit while also providing some soul resources. It's actually not too bad. But at the same time, it's a little bit still bad because of the whole cost, because of the counterblast cost is really disgusting at least at the moment. But overall, Wade is still really strong in terms of providing Bruce the power because once I did do a some early testing, I found out that Bruce at this point does feels like Spectral Duke DIabolos back in the G era, where you have a really big center lane and then just smack face with him and then there's a lot of crits. So it does put significant pressure on your opponent, and with this giving that 10k power in compensation of the personal riding, it's actually not bad. Next up, we have DIabolos Madonna Listh. Auto rearguard circle. When this unit attack hits a Vanguard, Soul Charge 2, if you are in final rush, choose one of your units and it gets 10k power until the end of turn. Now, of course, this I think this is a budget version, Leonard, technically, because Although you don't really call something out from the soul, but you do soul charge 2 on hit, and also you're able to give another unit 10k power. I think that's where the trade-off is. You could still run this, but then not really gonna be the best, because you need to attack hit to soul charge 2, which if you don't have enough soul and your opponent recognizes that this unit needs to hit to soul charge 2, then yeah, not great. The power boost is nice if you do hit, that is. The 10k power, always appreciated, because we're losing personnel, right, guys? Oh, and also if this unit does hit a Vanguard, it is mandatory to soul charge. So if you're hitting the rear guard, you're fine. If you're hitting the Vanguard, you're not fine, because soul charge 2, you're basically decking yourself out even further. Next up, we have DIabolos Charger Davan. Auto rearguard circle. When your rearguard stand, if you are in final rush, this unit gets 5k power until the end of turn, including this unit. So basically, this is going to be a 23 attacker on the second time Davan attacks, because the only way for you to stand is after you use whichever Bruce skill. The stand and draw does not count because it's before your right phase, and hence you are not in final rush yet. So there's that. It's basically a budget and weaker version of Marjorie, because Marjorie does get the 10k power whenever you use her skill, and you do get a soul and a draw, which is miles better than Davan. But then Davan being free of cost is really nice, but then the trade-off is the first time Davan attacks, you're not gonna get that power. Only during the second time is where you get that power. So there's that. Most likely not going to be seen running in Bruce deck, but then we might see some potential in the future, possibly. Next up, we have DIabolos Boy Crasty. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you are in final rush, this unit gets 5k power until the end of the turn for every 3 cards in your soul. Now, this is not a bad booster on your first final rush turn if you are running the Pandemonium build, because you will tend to build up a lot of soul when you basically reach your first final rush turn, and of course activating Pandemonium tactics because soul charge 4. However, after the 4th turn is where Bruce started to use his skill to restand the front row, is where Crasty's values start to diminish, because you start to soul blast like crazy already. So it's not really a sustainability card, because of course he needs to be on place in order for his skill to be activated. So it's still not a bad card. It's not really sustainable. As we move on to the later game, our soul is most likely going to be lesser and lesser and lesser. So Crasty might not see play for the time being. Also, he's not really a bad target to call with Leonard if you're playing the grade 3 Bruce instead of the grade 4. He's not really that bad. Next up, the new order card, Helheim Fervent Rage. Play this with cost, discard a card from your hand. Counter charge 1, if you are in final rush, draw 2 cards. Choose up to 2 cards from your hand and call them to rearguard circle, and they get 5k power until the end of turn. The counter charge on this order card is super appreciated because of how counterblast heavy this deck has become. And also, he does exchange your hand for potentially better card. It's basically 2 for 2, because you still need to play this order card as well as discarding 1 card to draw potentially better cards. And also you're still able to choose whichever 2 card from your hand to call even after the draw. So it's super nice, because you will still need to build your board after you use this order card. However, the problem here is that this order card is competing against Hellblast as well as Pandemonium Tactics, which is the 2 most broken, or I would say the 2 most powerful order cards that Bruce has at the moment. It's a bit sad that this order card does not give the front row 5k and only give the 2 cards being called the 5k. If this changes to give the front row 5k, then maybe, just maybe, this new order card could see play. Next up, we have the double R DIabolos Striker Lyle. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, cost counterblast 1, and this unit gets 5k power until the end of turn. Then, if you are in final rush, soul charge 2, choose a card from your soul and call it to an open rearguard circle. This is the biggest winner of the set, I would say, because initially I did not give too much thought about this card, because I mean, you have something like Derek already. But then after some testing with this card put into the deck, this card is actually really good. You are able to get any unit from the soul to superior call out, this is already miles better than Derek already, because Derek is dependent on how many open rearguards that your opponent has, which also means that you are playing with RNG from superior calling the top deck. This card basically lets you exchange whatever is already in your soul to reuse that. So we have a lot of options that we could be using with Lyle. First one, of course, is Quenlu to give both your front row the guard restrict skill. One other target that you would want to call from the soul if you are running this card is, of course, Dober, because Dober could function as a booster as well as a power-up unit to any unit on the front row. You could give the 10k power to Bruce himself. You can give the 10k power to whichever front row unit that you want, which is still good. Lyle could also be a cause for Regina, because Regina needs 2 other rear guards to put into soul to call something out. So Lyle by himself is just basically Counterblast 1 and a 15k attacker. If your opponent does survive your onslaught and you surviving your opponent's onslaught, Lyle is basically a dead card. So you could basically just let Lyle be the cost for Regina to basically put Lyle to soul and another rearguard to soul to superior call another unit out and give both Regina as well as the newly called unit the 10k, which is really good and has a really great synergy between both of them. Of course, Counterblast is a thing because Counterblast 1 for Lyle, Counterblast 1 for Regina. Yeah, it's really heavy. Last, of course, the big man himself, Unrivaled Bruce. DIabolos Unrivaled Bruce. Auto Vanguard Circle at the start of your right phase until the end of turn, you final rush. Basically the same thing as Violence Bruce. Auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit attack. If you are in final rush, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 5, stand all of your front row units, and this unit gets drive -2 until the end of turn. He is basically the same as Violent Bruce with the added cost of Counterblast 1, which sucks really bad. It sucks a lot. By basically allowing an extra Vanguard attack is really nice. This will of course means that we have a total of 6 attack once you go into Unrivaled Bruce. And since Unrivaled Bruce on the first attack is a triple drive and second attack is a single drive, you have a 4 drive check in total, which will make your offense a little bit dangerous, but not gonna be as threatening as the normal grade 3 Violence Bruce build. By going into Unrivaled Bruce, it also means that you are somewhat more reliant on trigger checking, because you not only do you lose the personal riding, you are also limited on how many things you could do in that turn. For example, if your opponent does damage deny you, it's a little bit hard to do a lot of stuff. Do you want to use Regina's skill? Do you want to use Lyle's skill? Or do you want to use Derek's skill? It's really a hassle. And this deck does not appreciate getting the over trigger in the early game. The deck somehow does really appreciates running a lot more fronts than normal, but with a lot of crit, it's also pretty good. For me myself, I would still prefer the crit more than the fronts. Of course, front is still amazing in this deck. The unfortunate thing about Unrivaled Bruce is that he actually accelerates the decking out, because triple drive as well as a single drive, it means 4 cards out of the deck. With you running Pandemonium as well as some other stuff, yeah, you could not play Bruce as a long drawn out deck, because you will deck out much more faster than your opponent. So, and one last thing is that I do feel that Unrivaled Bruce is somewhat too early for his debut, because we don't really have a lot of support cards that basically is enough to support Unrivaled Bruce. Yes, most probably most of you guys are gonna flame me for saying, you are already getting so much support for Bruce, why the hell are you asking for more? If you are using Bruce as passionate as I am, you will understand where the weakness of Bruce is. I'm not saying it's weak. Needing more support does not mean that Bruce is weak, okay? Needing more support means that right now what Bruce is doing is not really efficient. So there's that. I'm gonna put it at that, because if I say any more people are gonna get triggered. And that is all for this video. I will be doing another video for Bruce after some really extensive testing. Do let me know down in the comment section on what do you think of Unrivaled Bruce and the whole of Bruce support in DBT04. Do like and subscribe if you like this video. And also do remember to ring the bell notification icon so that you don't miss a video I upload. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.